That's the one. Okay, so please help me welcome all the way from right here in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, author, speaker, and unimpressively average golfer, Maureen Zappala. You're on.
Hey, thank you, Len. Thank you for letting me be here with you guys tonight. Just a quick show of hands. Yes, you have heard of imposter syndrome. Have you heard of imposter syndrome? Okay, good.
No.
When I speak about this, when I present about it, and I speak, this is what I do for a living. I'm a professional speaker. This is my area of expertise. When I speak to audiences, I'll ask that question, and usually I'll get about, I don't know, depending on the group, half to 2/3 of the audience, yes, they've heard of it. The other half to 1/3, not so much. But as I talk about it and as I present about it and describe it, I can almost see the lights go on in their heads as I look at in the audience, and they're like, so they may not have heard about it, but they have experienced it. And it's that secret self-doubt. And it especially strikes super smart people, competent people, educated people, degreed professionals, influential leaders, and entrepreneurs, and mothers. It hits mothers. I don't know of the women that are here in the group, if you're moms, and we're all smart people. You know, I'm a rocket scientist. I'm not a Mensa, but I'm a rocket scientist, pretty smart person. There was nothing like having a couple of kids to make me feel pretty stupid. And now that they are both adults, they're both young adults, they're both in college, they're starting to come around, and I'm not quite so stupid anymore. But it was a long road to get there. But let me take you back. I'm going to share my screen here.
And if anybody has any questions, just type them in the chat room, the Zoom chat room, and we'll answer them all later. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go here. All right, why are we not going? There we go. Okay. I want to take you back to the fall of 1983. I was a brand new engineer fresh out of college. I went to the University of Notre Dame. So let's have a moment for the Irish. Maybe not. Okay. Now I have to say, I went to Notre Dame. I lived in Ohio for 36 years, so I'm a big Ohio State fan. In fact, I wrote a book about Ohio State football. My daughter is here in Las Vegas. She's a freshman, just finished her freshman year at UNLV, and my son is still back in Cincinnati, back in Ohio at University of Cincinnati. So I've got a little bit of a collegiate mishmash going on. But I graduated from University of Notre Dame with a degree in mechanical engineering, and my first job was at NASA in Cleveland. Now, I was overwhelmed. I mean, I don't know if you remember your very first job. I bet you were both excited and nervous, right? I mean, you were probably like I was excited. This job at NASA was my dream job. I was an aeronautics and an aviation fan. I didn't know much about the space program, but I knew a lot about jet engines and aircraft engines and fighter aircraft. And there's a part of NASA that focused on that. And I was really excited. In fact, my first job at NASA was a project engineer in the propulsion systems lab, which is a jet engine test facility. We tested engines for military aircraft. So I was really excited that first day, but I was also terrified because this was NASA. This is where all the really smart people hang out. I mean, I remember thinking, what were they thinking when they hired me? Because my transcript was, I was not a straight A student. I remember thinking they probably just hired me because I was a girl. Now, my first assignment as a project engineer in the propulsion systems lab was really simple. I just had to observe the crew conducting an engine test. How hard is that? Show up, shut up, don't screw up. I could do this. Well, I walked into the control room the very first day, and if you've seen pictures of control rooms, you know what they look like. Tables with, walls with monitors and screens, tables with keyboards, people on headsets. And I walked in and I was totally overwhelmed and underskilled. And I thought, oh, I can't do this. I, I don't know what they know, but I had a job to do. So I looked through the control room and I saw one empty seat in the back of the room against the wall. And I thought, okay, that seat's mine. So I snuck into the room and I slithered along the wall and I plopped myself in the seat and I began to do my job. I mean, I had no idea what was going on, even though I tried to pretend I did. Now, the room was filled with probably about 18 people, and it was intense. They were on headsets. They were communicating with each other, studying their consoles, and I could hear them whispering and chatting with each other. I mean, it was just really intense, right up until I got the hiccups. Oh.
Maureen is muted.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute her. Sorry, go ahead.
Am I muted?
Yeah, I muted everybody and I didn't realize it would mute you too.
So have I been muted since the beginning?
No.
No, go ahead and start back at the hiccups. Start at the hiccups.
Okay, good. So I tell that story not because it's a story of hiccups. I tell the story because the hiccups are a metaphor for what many of us smart people experience. And you folks who are Mensa, I mean, where you're known worldwide as the smart people. And yet, I bet many of us still sometimes feel like at any given moment, we're going to have a hiccup and somebody is going to turn around and say, who are you? Who let her in? He's not one of us. It's almost as if you feel the success that you've earned or the success on paper is not real and that you don't deserve it. And therefore you feel like a fraud. That's what imposter syndrome is. Now here is the scene of the crime. Unless you think I was making it up, there I am, tucked away in the corner. Do you notice anything else about this room? Hint, about the people in the room. Hint, I'm the only one. I was the only woman in that whole department, actually, for many years. So not only did I feel like I didn't belong there, like they had hired me because I was a woman, now I'm working side by side with men. So there was this stress that I felt like I was in over my head and I couldn't measure up. That's imposter syndrome. Now, fortunately, I eventually overcame it. I can't really say I overcame it while I was at NASA. In fact, the things that I'm going to show you tonight were things that I wish that I knew at NASA, because I would have saved myself a lot of anxiety and headache and lost sleep. But it's still, when I talk to audiences, I meet people all the time, smart, skilled, successful, influential, educated people that still have this internal doubt that says, oh, I just don't think I'm really all that smart. I can't internalize myself. I can't own my success. I can't replicate my success. Therefore, it must have been a fluke. And if it was a fluke to earn the success, if it just kind of suddenly happened, then it will suddenly vanish. So there's this constant fear of being found as a fraud and being stripped of the title of a smart person. Now, imposter syndrome, it's a chronic fear of being found out as a fraud despite having the impressive resume. And you all know what that is. Now, if you're thinking, well, I don't know, maybe I have it, maybe I don't, I don't know. Let's take a quick true false quiz. Now, I don't want you to raise your hand or yes, no, or even shout out or chat anything. Because some of these questions are they're not super personal, but I just want to be sensitive. I don't want people to reveal something that they really are not ready to talk about yet. But these are really good questions for you as they're statements, they're true, false statements. They're good barometers to determine whether or not you think imposter syndrome is something that's affecting you. So let's take a look at the first statement. I can give the impression that I am more confident than I am. Think to yourself, is that true or false? Number 2, I'm afraid others will discover how much ability or knowledge I lack. Number 3, I compare my skills to my peers and I fall short. Number 4, much of my success is the result of luck or timing. Number 5, it's hard for me to accept compliments about my work or my skills. Oh, sorry, I thought I had 6, but it was number 5. If you answered yes to some of those questions, you probably struggle with imposter syndrome. Now, there's good news and bad news. The good news is, or I'm sorry, the bad news is that you don't cure it, but you can control it. In other words, we can address the symptoms, we can address the experience and think your way through it. It's a cognitive distortion. And because it's a cognitive distortion, it takes cognitive strategies to undistort it. And that's what we're going to learn tonight. You don't mend it, but you can manage it. You don't eliminate it, but you can alleviate it. And that's good news. The dark side of it is that it never completely goes away, but you can so much more reduce the impact and the effect that it has in your world. Now, let's talk a little bit about who it affects. I kind of gave a quick list of all the people that it does affect. People that are skilled, smart, successful, degreed, professional, credentialed. They are usually, oftentimes in leadership positions. Sometimes they're even at a C-suite level of leadership. Entrepreneurs get it, primarily because it's kind of that we're lone rangers. I'm an entrepreneur and I have to be very intentional about getting mentors and asking for help from people that know, because otherwise I'm just kind of floundering out by myself. It affects people in specific industries. It hits a lot of STEM related people, science, technology, engineering, and math. My background is engineering, mechanical engineering, so I was ripe for the picking. And the reason it hits people in STEM industries is it's no secret that technology is developing and we are constantly being bombarded with new developments, new technology, upgrades, replacements. Engineers feel compelled to not just know what they need to know, not just what they learned in school, but to also keep abreast of what's coming down the pike. And it's just so much pressure. It affects people in the arts, people in the performing arts, the fine arts, graphic design, architecture, photography. If you're a person that straddles two fields, like you're in the art field and the technical field, like a graphic designer or a web designer or an architect, you get a double dose of it. It affects people that come from specific cultural backgrounds. And I don't mean that as I know right now in the world, we have to be very careful about how that comes across, but it's more of a pure cultural thing, like, okay, let me back that up. Not that it comes from a cultural thing, but it tends to be amplified when somebody from a culture transitions into a different culture. And it could be a culture. It could also be a professional culture. It could be a transition from the collegiate culture of graduate school, maybe, into the corporate culture of a job. So anytime there's a transition, the voice of the imposter is just roaring. Sometimes it rears its ugly head simply with an assignment change, because again, transition tends to be what triggers the voice of the imposter syndrome. oops, let me go backwards. I don't know how to go backwards. All right. Okay, I'm gonna pretend that you saw that other slide that it said, how does it affect you? It keeps very capable people small and hidden and sometimes timid. But there's also a facade of competence, but it's not really a facade. You cannot fake competence. You can fake confidence, but competence, if you have a level of competence, if you have a level of accomplishments and accolades and degrees and awards and recommendations and referrals, you can't fake that. But you may not believe it. That's where the cognitive distortion comes in. So in that disbelief, you look at your history, you look at your own resume and you say, yeah, but, and you just dismiss it, you explain it away. Yeah, they only hired me because I was a girl. I only got an A because it was on a curve. I only got that position because I knew so-and-so. I mean, we just explain it away and not grasp the impact of your skills and abilities. And that then will poison a lot of your steps as you take forward to maybe advance your career, take on a new challenge, or change jobs, or speak on a topic that maybe you are less than familiar with. So it tends to hold people back. But when you overcome imposter syndrome, what you can expect is sheer joy, unbridled enthusiasm, boldness, confidence and courage, and a willingness to step forward even if there is a reasonable chance of failure, because you realize that, for one thing, failure is necessary for success, and failure teaches you something about yourself that you might not learn any other way. And failure doesn't kill you. I mean, for the most part, at least probably in, most of the fields that we are dealing with. So let's move forward. Let's talk about the solution. I've developed something called the fraud-free framework. It's 5 strategies to defeat the imposter syndrome. Now, a lot of this is based on psychology. I'll give you a disclaimer. I am not in psychology. I am not a psychologist. I think I took one psychology class in college, which was over 36 years ago. I've been out of college now, 37 years. And but I've done a lot of reading. Now, I don't mean to in any way discredit psychology or diminish it, but the principles that I've developed in my fraud-free framework come from a simplified perspective of psychological principles, but they are still powerful and effective. Now, I want to offer you a free gift even before we get started. There's going to be content in here that may cause you to think, oh, I'd like to know more about that. Or what did she say about that? Or how can I stay in touch with her? So I am going to put up, if you've got your smartphone and you want to take a quick picture of this, just hold up your camera and scan it. It will take you directly to a site where you can input your email address and you'll automatically be put onto my mailing list. Now, I don't distribute your address. I don't, sell it to anybody. It's just a way for me to stay in touch with you if you would like that. And along with that, you'll get a PDF that's an infographic that will have this fraud-free framework nicely displayed and listed out so that you can refer back to it. So the 5 strategies of the 5, the first one is to recognize the imposter syndrome. Now, if you took that little quiz that we just had, that little true-false quiz, maybe you're thinking, okay, yeah, this is me. There are some specific symptoms that, as a cluster, describe this even more succinctly, or more completely, I should say. The 6 symptoms are this. The first one is what's called the imposter cycle. Now, what's interesting about the imposter cycle is that even though it is a symptom, and it's a cycle of behavior, and I'll describe it in a second, all of the other symptoms, the other 5 symptoms, happen at some point in that cycle. So knowing this cycle is like groundbreaking. It is like revelationary, but I think you're going to understand why when I describe it. It looks like this. Suppose you, as a person who struggles with imposter syndrome, walked into your job or your circle of influence and you had a new project. Let's just use this as an example. You have a new project to handle. A person with imposter syndrome, no doubt, wants to do a good job. We all do. But this person will look at this project and say, it will respond in one of two ways. The first way is they will look at this project and think, wow, I'm not really sure exactly what to do, so I better do a lot. I mean, they will over prepare. They are working day and night. They are overcoming obstacles, imagining obstacles to overcome, sending out emails, engaging other people, doing the research, sending out summaries. I mean, it's just crazy how much work is done, and they generate an enormous amount of energy and work, and they get the job done. The second way that a person with imposter syndrome would respond to this, they'd look at this project and they think, not really sure exactly how to start, so I won't. I'm going to procrastinate. And suddenly, everything else looks more interesting. Let's clean up my inbox. Let's rearrange my desk. Let's go on an expedition. Let's go scrub a closet. Let's go do something else. And you just kind of do that for a long time up until you realize, ooh, I'm running out of time. Deadline's coming up. Or somebody comes to you and says, hey, Steve, how's that project coming? And you panic. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm running out of time. I better get busy.
11:30.
And you whip yourself into a frenzy. What was that? Oh, I thought somebody said something. You whip yourself into a frenzy. You are working night and day. You are losing sleep. You are losing weight. You're making your friends and family crazy. And you get the job done. Now, the thing is that whether you are an over-preparer or a procrastinator, the result is exactly the same. You knock it out of the park. You just do a magnificent job. Because that's who you are. I mean, you have the skills, you have the abilities, even though you kind of went to it at a different, little crazy kind of way. But you do a great job and everybody explodes with applause. And you breathe a sigh of relief. But it's not because you did a good job. It's because you thought, phew, that was close. They almost figured out. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. And that relief suddenly is transitioned into panic because tomorrow is a new day and tomorrow is a new project and you have to do it all again. So it's this imposter cycle that looks like this. You have a new project. You either over-prepare or procrastinate. Successful outcome, lots of applause and recognition. You relax. Then you stress, and you do it all again. This is the imposter cycle. The trick to overcoming the imposter cycle is to disrupt the cycle. And you disrupt it by recognizing it and knowing where you are on that cycle. So the second symptom of the imposter cycle is the need to be special or best. In other words, this is the perfectionist. This is somebody who has to do everything perfectly. Failure is not an option. It's also somebody who tends to rub shoulders with the people in the know. They're the name droppers. They're the ones that, they're kind of, brown nose their way up to the top. Because in their heart of hearts, they think, I don't have enough to bring to the world, so I got to hang out with other people that do. Because their greatness will spill onto me, and then that will make me great. But the bigger symptom is perfectionism. You just work and work and work and work and work and work and work. The smallest thing must be perfected. The third symptom is the superhero complex. If the perfectionist has to do everything perfectly, The superhero has to do everything, and they have to do it alone. This is the person who doesn't like to delegate. This is the person who somehow associates delegating with a lack of skill or a character flaw, because in their mind they're thinking, well, if I'm really that smart, I shouldn't need the help. But it's not true, because, I mean, when people ask me for help, I'm honored. I don't look at them as less than human. Actually, I that elevates them. I'm like, cool, they admire me, and I'm going to hang out with them and support them. So to say I don't want to delegate, they can't do it as well as me, it's a distortion of reality. The fourth symptom is the use of charm, insight, and humor. This is somebody who is generally uncomfortable not knowing something. Like, for example, in a conversation group. If the group is talking about something that they may not be familiar with, they feel uncomfortable. Silence, in their mind, silence equals stupid. No, it's not true. It is irrational, but it still is there. This is actually my biggest thing. I feel like I have to contribute something. So, hey, I'll throw out a joke. I'll make a funny comment, or I'll refer to some piece of wisdom that I gathered this week, or I'll repeat something that I heard somebody else say, just so that I'm not silent. Because if I'm silent, then you'll think I'm stupid. But if you're laughing, you won't think I'm stupid. I mean, it's just so crazy. But it still is a symptom, and it's a ill-fated strategy. The fifth symptom is fear of failure, which is no surprise. None of us like to fail. But the person with imposter syndrome goes to Herculean efforts to make sure failure does not happen, to the point where they project failure is almost a certainty, and they won't even enter the arena. I mean, I dated a guy years ago who refused to pick up the game of golf. I like to golf. He refused to, because he envisioned himself as being a hack, and he wouldn't even try. It's like, it's just a game. It's just a game, and we all started out as a hack. I mean, we'll work through it, but it's just paralyzing to a person with imposter syndrome. Related to that, number 6 is the fear or the disdain of success. This is a person who says, well, if I succeed, how am I going to repeat it? So I better not succeed. So it's a fear of success, because it's a fear of having to continually replicate it. Or the person who has success and doesn't like what it does to them, or doesn't like what it does to their relationships. People will view them differently. Maybe they've got weird ideas about money, because with success often comes financial compensation. So you think, oh, I don't deserve the money. There's a deserve level thing. So there's a lot of issues that go on with this. Sometimes we mask a fear of success as a fear of failure. I'm afraid I can't do it perfectly, so I'm going to not do it at all. When actually, you can do it really well, but again, you fear having to duplicate it, replicate it, and perpetuate it. So those are the 6 symptoms. So now that you know what the symptoms are, moving on to strategy number 2 is to reverse the imposter syndrome. Now, the way you reverse it is, again, this comes back to principles of psychology. I took it from something called cognitive behavior therapy. I call it my Tri-C approach, but cognitive behavior therapy is a systematic evaluation of your thoughts and an intentional changing of the thoughts, because your thoughts and your emotions control your actions, and your actions control your outcomes. So when you are, now that you know what many of these symptoms are, you can now recognize when you're in a symptom and then use this approach. And the approach is simple. Tri-C means they all start with the letter C. There's a hint. The first thing you do is you capture that thought. When you are in one of those symptoms, Now that you know what they are, now that you recognize them. You can't battle an enemy unless you recognize it. Now you recognize it. So let's suppose you are like, oh, there I go. I won't delegate. So you capture that thought. You capture that moment. You think to yourself, I'm not delegating. Why am I not delegating? I'm not delegating because I don't believe they could do it as well as I can. Well, then what you do is you cross-examine that thought. You put that thought, that question, that assumption, that idea, you put it on the witness stand and you drill down to see, is it true? Is it valid? Just because you have a thought, first of all, doesn't make it true. Second of all, doesn't always make it yours. So many of our thoughts and our thought patterns came from somebody else or someone else, or came from our childhood or our influencers or a billboard that we read or a news report we saw. So evaluate it, drill down. You think to yourself, is it really true that they can't do it as well as I can? Where did that thought come from? How do I know that? What would happen if I let them do it? What if they did it better than I did? What if they did it faster? So you just drill down those questions. And then when you realize, or you get to the point where you realize it's kind of an invalid thought, then the third step is that you counteract that thought. You go in a different direction. And in this case, in this example, you say, by gosh, I'm going to delegate. I'm going to just take my chances, roll the dice, give somebody the chance to shine, and we're going to delegate. Really, what's the worst that could happen? So these three steps in sync with each other, systematic, intentional process to help you when you find yourself in one of those symptoms. Now, I mentioned very quickly in the beginning that I lived in Ohio for 37 years, and I'm a big Ohio State fan, and I did write a book about Ohio State football. But I didn't go to Ohio State. I went to University of Notre Dame, like I mentioned, and I often tell this story about how I came to write that book, and the Cliff Notes version of it is, I have a dear friend, his name is Jack Park, who is a media personality with Ohio State football. He asked me to co-write the book with him. And I thought it was absurd because he is so well known. He had already written, 3 or 4 books about Ohio State. He is the Ohio State historian. He is the resource for ESPN when they have a question about college football history. He's just a rock star. And I remember thinking, why is he asking me to write a book about Ohio State? I did not go there. Maybe it's just because he thinks I'm cute. I know I'm cute, but that's not why he asked me. He asked me because he told me, he says, Maureen, you are a good writer. You're a good researcher. You love college football, and I do. But I still had to use this same process to get me past my own, oh, I can't do that. What will my Notre Dame friends say? I don't know as much about Ohio State football as Jack does. The fans are going to figure out that I'm not that well versed. Well, okay, fine. I don't need to know everything about Ohio State. That's Jack's job. I am a good writer. What do my Notre Dame fans say? Well, guess what? At the time when we wrote the book, Urban Meyer was the coach of Ohio State. He used to coach at Notre Dame. So I was like, if Urban can do it, I can do it. So I went through this whole process and said, yes, Jack, I'll do it. And it was brilliant because we launched this book back, so it's been out now about 2.5 years. And it did pretty well. It put my son through University of Cincinnati, which was kind of cool. So the strategies work. All right, strategy number 3 is something I call re-people it. I totally made this word up. This is interesting about imposter syndrome. There's what's the right word? It's the paradox. It is amplified in community and diminished in community. And when I say that, people usually are thinking, what? What does that mean? Well, we're all smart people. And we've got, you guys have got the test scores to prove it. You've got the membership in Mensa to prove it. And usually, I bet when you're by yourself, because I know when I'm by myself, I can think, yeah, I've done pretty well for myself. I'm smart. I'm skilled. Yeah, got a good degree, great job. I'm pretty good. But it gets amplified when you get around other people. In your workplace, maybe you're comparing your skills with somebody else and you think, wow, I'm not as skilled as they are. I don't have that specific knowledge. I've not gotten that much experience. And so all of a sudden that imposter voice starts to try to diminish you. So it is amplified in community, but it is then diminished in community the minute you start to talk about it, or the minute you realize that, as statistics have showed, 70% of the people around you have imposter syndrome. You're not alone. That has got to make you feel so much better. I mean, just the fact that you can nod and kind of, share eye contact with somebody and say, yeah, me too, you are my soul sister. That diminishes the power of the imposter syndrome. Because this is what happens. This is what it looks like. If you were to illustrate the sum total of your expertise with a dot, we'll call it the stuff I know. So in this dot is your expertise. You get around other people and you think, uh-oh, they're looking at me and they think I know more than I really do. In other words, you've got a dot like this and they're looking at you, you think they see a dot this big on you. And so you think, oh no, I only know this much. They think I know this much. I wish I knew this much, but I only know this much. And so you live in this zone of fraudulence, which causes a lot of stress. And then it gets worse. Because you look around at the people around you and you think, oh my gosh, I've got this dot. They think my dot's this big. Their dot is this big. And there's this colossal amount of just a distortion, because this is not true. This is where the stress comes from. But let me show you what reality is. The reality is you do have a dot. This is the stuff you know. You are an expert in your field. You have expertise and perspective and opinions and experience. All of these things are in your dot. You have a great dot. And guess what? So is everybody else. Everybody's dot is different. It contains different experiences and education and history and I said education. It's just different. No more or less valuable, just different. But it still gets better. Because this is all the stuff that is the collective amount of stuff that is across all of time, space, and eternity. And as you can see, there is no way any one of us, even all lumped together, can come anywhere close to knowing everything. And yet we put pressure on ourselves to not just, maybe we don't force ourselves to know everything, but we sure pressure ourselves to know more than we think we should know. And so it just is so irrational and so destructive. Now, maybe you're thinking, well, Maureen, yeah, I'm a smart person, but I still don't measure up. I think I'm the only person that feels like that. Well, let's take this to the ridiculous. Let's talk about celebrities. Maybe you're looking at yourself thinking, well, I'm smart, I'm okay, but I'm not as smart as that person, or as successful or talented, as gifted as that person. So let's talk about some celebrities. We all know LeBron. Of course, I came from Cleveland, so yeah, I'm going to have a little moment here. And then Carrie Underwood is known for her magnificent singing voice. And let's throw in a politician. Let's talk about Ronald Reagan. Now, of course, I know Ronald Reagan's not with us anymore, but these are people that are clearly known for their dot. You know, you've got an athlete, you've got an entertainer, and you have a actor slash politician. Do you think any of them look at each other and think, I wish I was like that? Do you really think that they envy or wish that they could, like, I mean, really, let's take it to the extreme. Do you really think LeBron wants to sing like Carrie? I mean, that's just creepy. It's just wrong. Or Ronald wants, or Carrie wants to be a politician like Ronald. I mean, it just seems so absurd for people at the top of their game to want to switch dots with somebody. Yet it's what we do. We do the same thing. I know maybe you're thinking, well, Maureen, yeah, I'm in Mensa, but I'm still no Einstein. Really? Einstein himself said, the exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me very ill at ease, and I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler. You know, I don't know if you know much about Einstein. He had a learning disability. He loved science, hated math. In fact, he failed his college entrance exam. Yet he loved science so much, he found a way and made a way, and the rest is history. He rewrote science as we know it. So, hey, if Einstein struggled with imposter syndrome and did great things, what can you do? What can you do? All right, strategy 4 and 5, I'm going to zip through quickly because I don't want to keep you over. Strategy 4 is to repel it. Once you recognize the symptoms and then reverse it and then re-people it, you know, rethink your skills and abilities in context of other people, sometimes it's still going to crop up and creep up. And sometimes you're still going to be impacted by imposter syndrome. So you need to have a way to repel it, to really just, you know, let it slough right off of you. And this one is fun. This actually, I may give this to you as homework. I call it owning your dot. When I was an engineer at NASA, and I know the hiccup heard around the world, I wanted to just flee the scene of the crime. But I didn't. I stayed there. And I spent a glorious career in PSL. In fact, I eventually became the director of that jet engine test facility, and I loved it. And then it was time for me to leave NASA. Nothing bad happened. It was just time to move on to something else. And I was really concerned about passing the reins of my job onto my successor. So I created a job description. I documented everything I did on a daily basis, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. Put it in a document, 14 pages, handed it to my successor, and it was beautiful. I mean, the transition was so smooth. Years later, probably about 15 years later, I stumbled across this document, and I sat down and I read through it, and I thought, holy cow, I was good. That was a tough job, and I did it really well. See, I had about 15 years of objectivity to step back and really look at what I did. That's what I'm going to suggest to you. Now, you don't need to spend 15 years waiting to look back on your history, but I would suggest going back and collecting all of the press, all of the information, all of the data that supports the fact that you really are smart, that you are accomplished. Things like, well, clearly anything that indicates the level of your IQ would be certainly part of this. Awards, certificates, promotion news, magazine articles that were, I was profiled in a couple of magazine articles when I worked at NASA. Trophies that you've won, letters of recommendation, satisfied customers, raving fans, whatever it is, collect them all, review them, and believe them. For the most part, people are not lying when they tell you you are awesome. if you choose to disbelieve them, that says more about you than about them. Allow them the joy of the gift of their adoration and adulation, but collect the data that says that you are a rock star, because you really are a rock star. This is a fun exercise. So just go back and review it. It is objective data. You know, I think back to when I was promoted into the manager of the jet engine facility, and I remember thinking somebody must have made a mistake. But then I think back, I think, well, okay, so it's NASA, it's a government agency. There's a lot of layers. I can't believe one mistake would have gone undetected. And I can't believe that I fooled layers of people to thinking I was competent. So I really came to the conclusion, I got the job because I earned the job, which is a whole lot more, I don't know, just peaceful, instead of saying, oh, they only gave it to me because I was a girl, or because I was the only one, neither of which was true. I mean, I am a girl, but they didn't give it to me because I was a girl. So own your dot. Find the data that supports your dot. Read it, believe it, and own it. Rock your dot, because your dot is truth. Strategy number 5, I'm going to blast through very quickly. I call it reinforce it. This might sound a little woo-woo, a little like woohoo, spacey out there, but bottom line, if you do not know what your principles, values, and vision is for your life, you're going to be more susceptible to the impact of imposter syndrome. I'm sure you've heard it said that if you don't believe in something, you'll fall for anything. And this is so true with imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome attacks your sense of self, because at the core of imposter syndrome is shame. And if you don't feel pride, if you don't feel a sense of worthiness at your core, if you feel shame, imposter syndrome is just going to amplify that. It's not the same as guilt. Guilt says what you did was wrong. Shame says what you are is wrong. So it's imperative that you know to your core, that you define who you are, have a set of principles, have your certainty. It's called what I call attitude certainty, your personal conviction on a core set of values, which is associated with your sense of certainty. When you confirm your certainty, when you have a plumb line of what you follow, a path to follow, a goal to reach, you'll be less swayed by some of this emotional uncertainty of this imposter syndrome. In other words, to bring your A game, you need to know your why game. What is it that rocks you out of bed in the morning? What is it that you live for? What is it that you are willing to fight for? These are all part of, you know, the core essence of who you are. What I have found and what I've learned is that just somebody saying to you, I believe in you, is not enough. You need to believe in you. I mean, this is what it comes down to. This is a comic that I lifted, I stole. I couldn't get permission to use it. That's why it's black or kind of grayed out. But this is what it says. The guy in green says, I just don't know that I have what it takes to do this job. And the guy in the red says, are you kidding? Of course you have what it takes to do this job. And then the red guy says, you just have to believe and think positively. And the guy in green says, you're right. I'm positive I don't have what it takes to do this job. That's the problem with rah-rah thinking. This is not rah-rah thinking. This is I am who I am thinking. And that alone will get you into a place where you'll be less susceptible to imposter syndrome. So those are the 5 strategies. You recognize it, reverse it, re-people it, repel it, and reinforce it. Now I'm going to put in a quick interruption here. I do speak on this topic a lot. And if you are part of an organization or company or another association that might benefit from this, I would love to stay in touch with you. I would love to connect with you to see how I could serve you. But I also have another opportunity for you. Because I wasn't able to go deeper into some of these, and because when I do speak on this, people all the time are saying, wow, Maureen, this was great. What do I do now? Can I have more? Yes, I created more. What I've created is this fraud-free framework video program. It's a self-paced 7-session video program and workbook that will take you deeper into these principles so that you can personalize your own overcoming of imposter syndrome. You'll learn how the symptoms impact you. You'll learn in your life how to recognize them. You'll learn to really capitalize on your strengths, not just your skills and talents, but your character qualities, which is a huge part of overcoming imposter syndrome. And I'll give you some very practical ways to document your dot, go collect your information to kind of, find the press of the good stuff that says the good things that the press says about you. And I will lead you through an exercise to help you really nail down your principles, your values, and the things that you stand for. So I'm offering that as a free, not a free bonus. Did I say free? No, as an extra bonus. But if you want, again, take a picture of that, it'll take you right to the page with more information. If you don't want to take a picture of it, or take a picture of that, if you want to take a picture of the website, I've got this there for you as well. That website, that web address will take you to the same place, just in case you don't have a scanner on your phone. Let me close with a very quick story. One day I was in PSL. I was the lead engineer for the engine work of the X-29 forward swept wing aircraft, which maybe you've seen pictures of it. This was a pretty high-level project. And I was the lead engineer for the propulsion work. So we had this engine, it was an F404 engine, on our test stand inside of the propulsion systems lab. We were ready to start the test, and we realized that we didn't have the measurements inside the engine. We needed a physical length, the diameter inside of the engine. Nobody was available to do it. Nobody fit the back end of the engine. It was about 18 inches in diameter. Nobody was small enough except me. And when the crew chief said, Maureen, you do it. Here's some white coveralls. You put them on and you crawl in there. My first thought was, I can't do that. No, I'm claustrophobic. What if I screw up? I mean, this is a big project. It's all on me. And I don't want to get in there. It's dirty. It's smelly. I'm not trained. But we had no choice. It was either I get in the engine or we delay the project. So I shimmied my way into the engine, and I was wearing a headset so that the technician could talk me through. I had to use the special equipment. He talked me through it, and I thought, oh, this isn't as hard as I thought it was. It's not as scary as I thought it was. And actually, oh my gosh, I'm inside of an F404 turbofan engine. This is the engine that's on the F-14, the one on Top Gun where they're taking off the aircraft carrier. You see flame coming out. That's where I was without flame. I thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. Oh my gosh, who gets to do this? And when I was done taking the measurements, I slipped out of the engine, and the girl that came out of the engine was different than the girl that went in, because I overcame my own self-doubt. I recognized my little symptoms of, oh, I can't do it. I don't want to, I was afraid to ask for help. I was afraid it was going to mar my image, but yet I took a chance. And that's what I'm hoping that you do. If at any point you are faced with, if you are ever faced with a time where you're like, oh, I don't know, my skills were good here, but they're not good here, I'm going to challenge you to think about climbing inside of a jet engine. If this city girl, this young engineer could have done it and managed to live to tell about it, what can you do? I mean, the sky is the limit. When you go through these strategies and overcome your imposter syndrome, even if you have a hiccup that's heard around the world, you're still going to land on your feet and feel great about being great. That's all I've got, Len. You want to take it away?
Okay. Let me switch speaker view. Okay, let's see. Is everybody unmuted now? Unmute all. How about that? I think that's what I wanted to do. No, they're still muted. Nope. I'm just doing what it says. Okay,
Yeah, they're all unmuted.
there was a question.
Bonnie is.
Says, will the slides be available about 3 C's and 5 R's? And what I was about to send to everybody when you said you were finished was, we're recording this presentation, this Zoom thing, so it should be posted. I think, Tiffany, didn't you say you were going to post it on the website or something?
Yeah, it'll be on the Southern Nevada Mensa website, which is snmensa.org.
Yeah, you got the sun behind you. We can't even see your face.
Sorry.
You look like you're in the witness protection program.
Yeah, that's funny. So I didn't see, I'm looking at all the posts here, and I don't really see any questions.
Tareen has her hand up.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Tareen.
I was waiting to the end. So I don't know how this kind of goes with imposter syndrome, whatever, but I'd be interested to hear what you say. I don't have imposter syndrome, I don't think, because I do know what I know. I know what I don't know. I probably know that better. But I know what I know, and I know that I'm skilled in certain areas, and I'm okay with that. The problem I have is that I'll do something and people will say, oh, that was really awesome, fantastic, brilliant, whatever. And I'll go like, I do that shit every day. It wasn't that hard, right? Or like, I can do that with half my brain tied behind my back. I mean, that's not impressive, because for me, that's really easy.
Yeah, that's called the curse of knowledge.
Right. And that's more the thing that I get, is I find it very hard to ever feel accomplished or to even enjoy an accomplishment, because I feel like I didn't have to put in any work or skill or anything. That was so easy for me. And even in retrospect and reflection, I can go like, I put many hours into that, but that was just time, which everybody's got time. So it still wasn't a big deal.
What I have found in research and with talking with people, because I totally get, I mean, like, I speak for a living. People are like, oh my gosh, you're so good. I'm like, I can do this in my sleep. But it wasn't always like that. There was an amount of work that I had to get to this skill. The thing is, we always have to remember that when people compliment it, they are giving us a gift. And so we really should acknowledge that as the gift, like, say, thank you, I really appreciate it. But the other part of it is, in terms of how you respond or how you feel about it, because you have, developed this level of competence, you're comfortable. And that's fine, but try to do something that maybe stretches your skills or puts you in a little bit of a challenging intellectual situation or a skill situation. And when you do well and somebody says, wow, that was really good, then you'll be like, yeah, I know, I can't believe I did that. That was awesome. So to say that, yeah, I do this all the time, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But recognize that to them, it is a big deal. And when you do something that is slightly beyond your skill level, that's going to feel pretty cool too. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I think in my own life, the phrase necessity is the mother of invention is an apt one, because I've been thrown into some situations where I didn't feel prepared to overcome major, momentous obstacles where a lot of people depended on me, and I didn't think I had the knowledge. And so I just had to quickly stretch out, halfway fake my way through it until I did learn enough. And you know, things have a way of working out if you use your brain. That's all I can say. And the
Well, and two, you just so well illustrated something that is really important. Skills are one thing, character qualities are another. You might not have the knowledge, but if you have the persistence, the perseverance, the creativity, the willingness to learn, the willingness to, you know, stumble through, the stick-to-itiveness, that is huge.
right, the Mensa word, perspicuity, right? So, so, but I think all of the things that you do in your life add up to your character that you have. And you might not know that the adversity is building character, but later on you look back and you say, how in the heck did I get through that? You know, and you just have to believe in yourself and do it. I mean, some people give up, but I mean, you know, if you persevere and you just apply yourself, and it's amazing what you can do if you try, you know.
You will shock yourself when you just try. Yeah.
You know, and I think the other thing that you hear all your life, you know, especially when you're growing up, is you can do anything if you try. And, you know, if you really set yourself some good goals, you can achieve those goals one way or the other. I mean, if you really have the will to do it. But, you know, I think that there are a lot of people out there that underestimate their skills, and they never achieve, they regret or lament never achieving some life goals that you know, they're sort of their bucket list that wasn't done. You know, it's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
I know plenty of people like that you know, basically go to their grave wishing they had been able to do something. Shame.
17 years ago, I had the guts. I'd always been running regional gatherings, local group Mensa meetings. And I was challenged to run a national convention. And I said, oh, I can't do that. And all these people that worked with me in the local Minnesota group where I was at the time said, we'll come and help you. We'll help you. We'll support you. We'll do this. We'll do that. But we want you to be our leader. And that was real scary to me. But I thought about it. It took a little while for me to take it on. And I said, you know what? Okay, I'll do it.
But you know, one of the secrets of life, and I wish Donald Trump would learn this, is you need to surround yourself with good people and then give them good direction and let them do their job. You know, it's a shame that some people don't learn that, and people, you know, we all suffer because of that. But I know, you know, you have to kind of know what you don't know, like you said, somebody said, and and you also need to know when to come up for air. I used to tell my people that, you know, rather than make a mistake or something, the mistake is not asking for help, because there's somebody out there in the group that knows how to do what you don't know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If I could just real quick, I've only known I was Mensa level smart for 3 years, because I just took the test finally and was like, let's see what happens. So I'm relatively new to actually having confidence.
I told him to pass you, Tiffany. Go ahead.
Told what?
I told him to pass you. So.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate that. No, so I'm only just now introduced to like confidence in one's own like intellectual ideas. And the thing that I've always known though is that I could teach myself almost anything. And if there was something I couldn't teach myself, like there weren't books on it, there wasn't a YouTube video, there wasn't, you know, I couldn't find it, I could usually find somebody who knew more than I did, or who could point me in another direction. The thing is that the understanding that even if you don't know how to do a thing, as a Mensan, you are hardwired with the ability to teach yourself how to do that thing. You know what I mean? Like your superpower is figuring it out.
Yeah.
There's
another thing that you know, that it's the power or the worth of a good mentor. You know, if you identify people, or if you are like, now I'm mentoring some people, so that they don't have the learning curve that I had in my profession. And so I coach them now, and they, you know, I can tell that they're going to get further than I did, because you know, I just decided to retire, you know, actively and try to go through a bucket list with my wife. But I've saved them years and years of trial and error by imparting it. So I had great mentors, and two of my mentors, one was Jerry Vallon, the dean who started the hotel school here in Las Vegas. And, you know, he was my neighbor in Pennsylvania when he was assistant dean at Cornell. And when I told him I wanted to get into hotel work, this is after doing something else for 7 years, I'm running a business. And he said, well, come out and I'll be your, this is 1976, I'll be your mentor. And I didn't even know, I never heard that word. I said, well, is that good? You know, and he said, trust me. And that guy helped me so much that later on, I taught for 2.5 years at UNLV part-time and turned my paycheck back into the scholarship fund, you know, to repay a debt of gratitude. Fast forward, took companies public, and on NASDAQ, was president of them and all that stuff. Decided to retire, but then my wife died, okay, and I had nothing to do. So I got into business brokerage, which is a great profession. And the guy who is the guru of our industry, his name is Tom West. Okay, he kind of took me under his wing, and he thought I was a rebel because I was going to do all kinds of things that they hadn't done before. But he said, well, why don't you try it, see if it works? And to this day, I still contribute to his blog and everything, you know, all for free. In fact, I'm doing a national webinar coming up here, and I'm not charging him. And, you know, and he gets about 6,000 people in there. But so there's something to be said about giving back to the people who mentored you. You know, I think that's a good principle.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Does anybody else have anything?
Just
Just
wish I could get
two
the
words.
confidence back,
Dr.
but I
Nancy
can't.
never changes her expression. She just sits there exactly the same way.
Just 2 words of thanks to Maureen for the lecture today, and to
Yeah.
the folks from Las Vegas who set this up. Thank you very much.
Thank
Well, this
you
is
for
our
having
first
me.
one. And
It's actually the second one, but
oh yeah, well, yes, you're right, right. And I have something here. Let me share my screen. Let's see. Okay, so let me pull this over. Hopefully you can see this. Okay, so can everybody see that that the future
No,
presentation?
you're not sharing your screen yet.
Okay, hold on. I'm still
you
learning.
have to still have to select one after you click share screen.
Okay, so screen 1, screen 2. Okay, hold on. Oh, you can do it on that side. I had 2 screens, so I can do share screen 2. Now what happened?
I can't tell you how long it took me to figure out
Hold
share
on.
screen.
Still
Oh my
scrolling.
Really?
gosh.
All right, now
I still feel like an idiot when I have to do it.
pull this over here like this, and I take this one over to the other screen. Uh-oh. I lost
And you're like me, Len. You think out loud. I love it.
All right. So now all I have to do is hit screen 1. No, it didn't
No.
come up. I'm trying to show you a Word document that has our future. This is not good. Well, you can't see that, can you? Even though it says
No.
I've selected screen 1, but you can't see it. All right.
Well, if you select it, then you still have to share it again. Down at the bottom, you have to share it. You select the screen and then the little blue button that says share.
Or green, probably green.
button.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to do this. Now, see, it goes away when I touch that. Okay. So whatever. Never mind. Anyway, it was an idea. I'll figure it out for next time. Okay. So on June 16th, we've got Alex Raffi with Creative Courage with Alex Raffi. Okay. These were all going to be people who were going to be at our RG, by the way. On the 23rd of June, we have Melanie Warner on how do you know if you should write a book. The 30th, we have Maggie Harris on the power of strengths, which
I know Maggie. She's a great lady.
yeah, and when you do it, and you'll be getting full descriptions of these the day before the actual event. Burke files on the economics of crime, kidnapping, and advanced money laundering. That ought to be interesting.
Is that a how-to? Is that a
well-
how-to class?
What we couldn't do is there was a lady who was going to show us how. She's a professional lock picker. She was going to
Oh, wow.
bring her tools and everything and show everybody how to pick locks. But we can't do that on Zoom very effectively. On July 14th, we have Elizabeth Panzica on Atlantis Factor Fiction, followed by on the 21st by Patty Cavallari, which is her title is Western Art History, like we wish it was taught in school. And then on the 28th, one of our, I think she's still on, Brandy, you're still on, right?
Yes, I'm still here.
You're going to do the year of laughing dangerously, right?
Yes.
Why don't you give us a little thumbnail sketch of what that is?
Okay. Last year, I got laid off from my engineering job, and I decided that I was going to try stand-up comedy for a year. Well, that didn't work out, but I made a movie instead about doing stand-up comedy for a year. So anyway, it should be fun. I'll have some clips from the movie, and
that's called The Glutton for Punishment, that movie, right?
oh,
That's a tough thing to try, that stand-up. Jeez.
yeah, it was. I'm by nature an introvert, so yes, it was very, very difficult. I could go up there and I could like tell jokes, but I wasn't very good at it. I wasn't able to make connections with the audience. So anyway, I wrote a screenplay instead.
And she's such an introvert, she decided not to have video on tonight, so we can't even see her.
I didn't want to wear a bra.
Trust me.
What does that have to do with
This
anything?
afternoon when I talked to Maureen, she wasn't wearing one either, and it didn't matter. She was completely
I
naked.
do. I would just come from the gym. I
Usually
bet you didn't even recognize me when I showed up tonight. You're like, this is not the same girl I talked to today. I was just come back from the gym. I didn't recognize me.
Well, normally, they don't have pants on, but she just didn't have the top on. She had pants on though. So, all right. So anyway, and then we've got some more after that lined up. One of them is the ex-attorney general here in Nevada, who is now the chairman of the board of a big company, and he's got some pretty cool stuff he's going to talk about. So we have a whole bunch of very interesting and talk about diverse group of speakers. I mean, you couldn't program it any more diverse than this. So anyway, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Does everybody think 6 o'clock is a good idea?
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's great.
That's a good time. My wife said, "What the hell, 6 o'clock? Who wants to be on one of these at 6? You should make it either before dinner or after dinner." Okay, 6 o'clock.
I obviously I did during dinner. It's perfect.
Yeah, I was eating too there at the end. Yeah. Okay. All right. So
from the central time zone, and it's great for us.
Yeah, we can see that must be the remnants of that storm behind you, huh?
Robert, where are you? Robert, where are you?
Where are you?
Midland, Texas. It's in West Texas.
Okay.
I'm the local secretary for Permian Basin Mensa. It's a big oil area.
Cool. Now, how did you know to be on this call? How did you find that out?
It was promoted on Mensa Hospitality, American Mensa Hospitality.
Oh,
Somebody posted
I posted it to 5 different Facebook groups.
Right, and then I shared it with all of Permian Basin Mensa, and I noticed one of my other members is here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for doing that. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm in New York, and that's where I saw it too, in the hospitality.
Where in New York are you?
On Long Island.
I grew up on Staten Island.
Oh, great.
Staten Island.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I grew up in New Jersey, actually, but I moved out
Oh,
here.
that's okay. We'll forgive you.
I grew up in Philadelphia, so.
It's 2 strikes against me.
You know, in Las Vegas, you know, we have the Las Vegas greeting, and that is, hey, where are you from?
Mhm.
Okay, because you're all
I
from
know.
someplace else. And the
Because
second
nobody
thing
is
you say is,
nobody is from Vegas.
You
That's
say,
what
"How
I've only
long
been
you
here.
been-"
I've been here only 10 months, and I
right, you
can't.
say, how
I
long
think
you
I can-
been here? That's the second one.
Yeah,
Where are you
I
from?
think
How long-
I can count on one hand the number of people that I've met that have actually from Las Vegas.
When I moved here in 78, there were 146,000 people. I moved away in 87 to start a public company, and there were 450,000 people, right? And I moved back in the year, well, the end of 1999, there was 2.2 million people. It's like, what happened here? But so I've seen a lot of changes in Las Vegas, let me tell you. Luckily, I missed some of the major construction, like the arterials, like Desert Inn Road, and some other things when they did the, I guess Bechtel built the tunnel underneath the airport. I heard that was a major traumatic thing. I don't know, I wasn't here. So, okay, well, so we'll see you next Tuesday. Okay, everybody?
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thanks for attending,
Bye.
and thanks for putting up with me.
That was fun.